I'm Claire, I'm 29. And on Thanksgiving night, in front of my entire family, I placed a veterinary file on the dinner table and asked my mother why she sold my dog for $800. She didn't know I'd spent 11 years looking for him. She didn't know I'd found him 3 weeks ago, deaf in one ear, hips destroyed, chained to a concrete patio for 8 years. And she definitely didn't know that the same woman who bought him left me everything in her will, including the receipt. I was 8 years old when my grandfather placed a golden retriever puppy in my arms. He was warm, he was wiggling, and he smelled like hay and milk. "This is Max," my grandfather said. "He listens to people who listen to him. You think you can do that?" I nodded so hard my glasses slid down my nose. Max licked my chin. That was the beginning of the only unconditional love I would know for the next 10 years. My grandfather died when I was 11. Heart attack in his workshop, surrounded by half-finished birdhouses and the smell of sawdust. He was the only person in my family who ever looked at me like I was enough exactly as I was. When he died, Max slept on my bed for 3 weeks straight. He didn't eat much. He just pressed his body against mine and breathed. I think he was grieving too. My mother said dogs don't grieve. She said it while canceling the piano lessons she'd scheduled for me, the ones Grandpa had been paying for secretly. "We need to be practical," she said. "Sophia's conservatory audition is next month. We can't afford distractions." The Jensen house had a pecking order, and it wasn't subtle. Sophia was the masterpiece. I was the sketch they kept in the drawer. My sister was 3 years younger, which meant by the time I was old enough to notice the difference, she had already been crowned. Piano lessons at 5, ballet at 6, summer conservatory programs that cost more than our father's monthly salary. Her recitals were family events. Her report cards were framed. Her birthday parties had themes, photographers, and gift bags my mother assembled at midnight. I remember Sophia's 10th birthday party. It was a Princess Academy theme. My mother rented a hall. She hired a woman in a tiara to teach etiquette. There were 30 children, a chocolate fountain, and a photographer who followed Sophia around like she was a celebrity. I spent the party in the coach room reading a library book about dog training. I was 13. I'd asked for a new leash for Max. My mother bought me a journal instead. "For your thoughts," she said. "You have so many of them." Then there was me. I got a library card for my 7th birthday and a part-time job at that same library at 14. I shelved books. I read them during my breaks, and I applied for every scholarship I could find because I already knew no one was saving for my college. My mother said it built character. She said it while writing a $2,400 check for Sophia's new competition piano. She said it while telling me I couldn't have new glasses because the frames I had were perfectly functional. They were held together with tape. I'd been wearing them since I was 10. Max didn't care about any of it. He slept at the foot of my bed every night. He walked me to the bus stop in the mornings. When Sophia practiced her scales, Max would leave the room and find me, wherever I was, as if the sound hurt him too. My mother hated that. "That dog is supposed to be a family pet, Claire, not your shadow." I never corrected her, I just held him tighter. I trained Max myself. I saved allowance for treats and used library books to teach him commands. By the time he was 2, he knew 20 tricks. He could fetch my slippers, he could bring me the newspaper, he could sense when I was about to cry and place his head on my knee before the first tear fell. I told my mother about his progress. She nodded without looking up from Sophia's practice schedule. "That's nice, dear. Sophia's learning Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. For 12-year-old, that's extraordinary." Max and I went to the backyard. He fetched a tennis ball until the sun went down. I counted every retrieval like it was applause. High school was survival. I took advanced placement classes, worked weekends at the library, and volunteered at an animal shelter on Sundays. The shelter was where I first understood what I wanted to be. I watched a veterinarian set a stray cat's broken leg. I watched her explain the procedure to a crying child in words that made the child stop crying. I watched her work 12 hours and still kneel down to let a nervous dog sniff her hand. That was power, I realized. Not the power my mother wielded with checks and schedules. Real power. The kind that heals. I applied for scholarships in secret. I didn't tell my parents until the acceptance letters arrived. State University, full ride. The first in our family. My father shook my hand. My mother said, "Well, I suppose we won't have to worry about tuition for 2 children now. Sophia's conservatory will be expensive." She said it like I'd done it for her, like my success was just efficient budgeting. The summer I turned 18, everything changed. I had won a full scholarship to state, the first in our family. I had packed my boxes. I had said goodbye to my coworkers at the library. And 3 days before I was supposed to leave, Max disappeared. It was a Tuesday. August 11th. I remember because I'd been counting down. 72 hours until I left for orientation. I'd spent the morning making Max a goodbye schedule for my mother, feeding times, walk routes, the name of his favorite vet. I taped it to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a bone. When I came home from my last shift at the library, the note was gone. Max was gone. The backyard gate was open, swinging in the breeze. My mother found me hysterical in the backyard. "He must have gotten out through the garden gate," she said, her voice steady, almost bored. "You probably left it unlatched. You know how careless you can be." I hadn't used the garden gate in weeks. But I was 18, I was heartbroken, and I was already trained to accept blame that didn't belong to me. I searched until midnight. I called his name until my voice gave out. I walked every street in our neighborhood, then the next neighborhood, then the industrial park where no dog would go. My father watched from the window. He didn't come out. My mother went to bed at 10. "You'll need your rest for the drive to state," she said. "I'm sure he'll turn up. Dogs always do." He didn't turn up. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not the morning after that. I didn't go to state, not that semester. I spent 3 months walking every shelter in a 50-mile radius. I posted flyers until my fingers blistered from the staple gun. I checked found pet forums at 2 a.m. I called every veterinary clinic within 2 hours. My mother watched me with something I couldn't name. Not sympathy, something closer to impatience. "You need to move on, Claire, it's a dog. You're going to derail your entire future over a dog." She said it while packing Sophia's bag for master class in the city, a master class that cost $600. She said it while I was wearing the same clothes for 3 days because I hadn't stopped searching long enough to shower. I found a lead in week 6. A woman in a town 30 miles north thought she'd seen a golden retriever near the highway. I took 3 buses to get there. I walked for 6 hours. It was a yellow lab. The owner was annoyed. I apologized until he walked away. I sat on the curb and cried until a police officer asked if I needed medical attention. I went to state in January hollow with a photograph of Max taped inside my dorm closet. I looked at it every morning. I looked at it every night. I promised myself I would never stop looking. College was escape and armor at the same time. I majored in biology, then veterinary medicine. I worked 3 jobs. I graduated with honors and $40,000 in debt that was mine alone. I didn't go home for summers. I worked at research labs, at clinics, at emergency animal hospitals. I learned to read x-rays, to suture wounds, to deliver bad news to owners who weren't ready. I got good at it. I got good at being the person who stayed calm when everything was falling apart. By 26, I had my DVM license. By 27, I had opened a small clinic in a converted garage 3 blocks from campus. I treated strays for free. I kept a wall of found pet flyers behind my desk, and every time a golden retriever came through my door, my hands shook. The clinic was called Second Chances. I painted the sign myself. It was small, it was cramped, and it was mine. I had 2 part-time assistants, both pre-vet students working for experience and minimum wage. We opened at 8, closed at 6, and I did paperwork until 10. I didn't date. I didn't vacation. I had a couch in the back room where I slept when I was too tired to drive home, and I had Max's photograph still taped to the inside of my locker, faded now, the edges soft with handling. I developed a reputation. I was the vet who would see any animal, anytime, for any reason. I treated a parrot with anxiety. I treated a rabbit with dental disease. I treated a pit bull who'd been used as a bait dog, his face scarred, his trust shattered, and I sat with him for 3 hours every day for 2 months until he let me touch him without flinching. His name was Brave. His new owner, a kindergarten teacher, sent me a photograph every Christmas. He was sleeping on a pink blanket. He looked peaceful. I was 29 when Mrs. Helen Voss walked into my clinic. It was a Thursday in October, raining, the kind of cold rain that seeps through jackets and makes everything gray. The bell above the door chimed. I looked up from a chart. She was 84, widowed, and she carried a golden retriever in her arms like a baby. The dog was thin. His coat was dull. He had a white face and cloudy eyes, and when he saw me, he didn't react. He was deaf in his left ear. His hips were so arthritic Mrs. Voss had to lift him onto my examination table. I ran my hands over his ribs. I felt the scar on his left front paw, a clean line I'd memorized from 100 photographs. A scar from a fence he'd caught himself on when he was 2. A scar I'd cleaned and bandaged while he licked my tears because I was more scared than he was. His name is Buddy, Mrs. Voss said. I've had him 11 years. My husband bought him for me after our retirement. Best company an old woman could ask for. She smiled, patting his head. Though I think he misses his first home sometimes. He used to cry at the fence when we first got him. I kept my voice steady. Where did your husband buy him? Oh, some family needed quick money. The wife called it a rehomming fee. $800. We met in a grocery store parking lot. She had the paperwork ready, very efficient. Mrs. Voss laughed, but I was looking at the dog's eyes. The left one had a small brown fleck near the iris. Max's fleck. I'd named it his constellation when I was 9. I completed the examination. I prescribed pain medication for his hips. I didn't charge her. And when Mrs. Voss left, I closed my clinic, sat on the floor of the kennel room and screamed into a towel until my throat bled. My assistant, a 20-year-old named Jake, found me there an hour later. He didn't ask questions. He sat beside me and handed me water. I drank it. I stood up. I opened the clinic. I treated the next patient. I treated the one after that. I didn't tell anyone what I'd found. Not yet. Max hadn't run away. My mother had sold him, for $800, for Sophia's first month at the prestigious Westbridge Conservatory. The same conservatory Sophia dropped out of after 1 semester because the pressure was too intense. The same conservatory my parents refinanced their mortgage to keep paying for, even after she quit. I didn't sleep that week. I pulled public records, I searched archived bank statements, I found the receipt. My mother had printed it herself. Rehomming fee, $800. Golden Retriever male 4 years old. Dated August 14th. 3 days before I left for college. She'd planned it. She'd known I was leaving, she'd known Max was mine in every way that mattered, and she'd calculated exactly how much she could get for him. I found Sophia's conservatory records. She'd enrolled September 1st. The deposit was $800. The monthly tuition was $2,400. My parents had refinanced their home in November of that same year. I found the mortgage documents. I found the appraisal. I found everything. But I kept digging, because something about my mother's efficiency bothered me. The receipt was too clean. The timing was too perfect. And I found it in my grandfather's estate files, which I'd never had reason to examine until now. My grandfather had established a small education trust when I was born. Not much. $18,000. Enough for books, for a used car, for the security deposit on my first apartment. The kind of gift that says, I saw you. The trust was empty. Drained when I was 19, 2 months after Max disappeared. The beneficiary of record, Sophia Jensen, for educational enrichment. My mother had forged my signature on the withdrawal forms. She'd used the money for Sophia's tuition at Westbridge. And when Sophia quit, the remaining funds went to a family vacation to Cancun. I found the photographs on my father's old Facebook account. Sophia at 18, drinking something blue, my parents smiling in matching sunglasses. The date stamp was March of my sophomore year. I was working 3 jobs and eating ramen. They were snorkeling. I sat with that information for 3 weeks. I treated Mrs. Voss's other dogs. She had 3, a poodle named Duchess, a terrier mix named Scout, and Buddy. I saw her every Tuesday. We talked about her husband, Arthur, who'd been an engineer and who'd built her a greenhouse where she grew orchids. We talked about her son, David, who lived in Seattle and called once a month. We talked about Buddy, who was slowing down, who slept most of the day, who still wagged his tail when she sang. I learned that her husband had died 6 months ago. I learned that she had no children, no nieces, no one. And I learned on her 3rd visit that she was dying, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She told me like she was commenting on the weather. I'm putting my affairs in order, Dr. Jensen. Buddy is my only worry. I'll take him, I said before I could think. When the time comes, I'll take him. She looked at me for a long moment, her cloudy blue eyes sharp in a way that made me wonder what she saw. You love him already, she said. It wasn't a question. I saw it the first day. He's yours, isn't he? He always was. Mrs. Voss died on a Tuesday in October. Her lawyer called me Thursday. She had left me Buddy, her car, and $12,000 in savings. She had also left me a manila envelope. Inside was the original receipt for Max, a photograph of the woman who sold him, standing in a grocery store parking lot. My mother, younger, smiling, holding Max's leash like a product she was proud of. I framed that photograph. I hung it in my clinic behind the desk where I could see it every day, and I started planning. I hired a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, and she specialized in estate fraud. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You have a case. You have a strong case. But cases take years, and they're public. Your family will fight. They'll say you're vindictive. They'll say you're unstable. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about it for 3 days. Then I called my father. It was the first time I'd spoken to him in 8 months. "I'm coming to Thanksgiving," I said. "I'm bringing something. Tell Mom I'm bringing a gift." Thanksgiving was mandatory in the Jensen house. It was also Sophia's favorite holiday because it was the one day she could perform. Every year, she played some elaborate piece after dinner while my mother wept and my father recorded it on his phone. This year, Sophia was 31, unemployed, living in my parents' renovated basement, and still practicing 4 hours a day for an audience of 6. I arrived at 4 p.m., carrying a pumpkin pie I'd bought and a leather portfolio I hadn't. Max was in my car, sedated, comfortable but present. He was 13 years old. He had maybe a year left, and he was going to hear this even if his left ear was gone. The house looked smaller. The same blue shutters, the same maple tree in the front yard, the same wreath on the door my mother changed every season. I stood on the porch for 30 seconds before ringing the bell. Max was warm in his carrier on the back seat. I'd left the car running, the heat on low. It was cold. November cold. My mother opened the door. She smiled the smile she used for guests. "Claire, you came." She didn't hug me. She never hugged me. She stepped aside. "Sophia's in the kitchen. She's making her famous cranberry sauce." Sophia's cranberry sauce came from a can. She added orange zest and called it famous. The dinner was performance as always. Sophia dominated conversation. My mother redirected every topic toward her younger daughter's artistic journey. My father drank wine and nodded in the right places. I was quiet. I was always quiet at these dinners. They had mistaken my silence for compliance years ago. Sophia talked about her new project, a consulting business for pianists. "I helped them find their authentic voice," she said. She'd been working on it for 3 years. She had no clients. My mother nodded like she was hearing about a Nobel Prize. "Sophia's always been so entrepreneurial," she said, "even as a child." I thought about Max in the car, breathing slow. I thought about Mrs. Voss, who'd known in one glance what my mother never saw in 29 years. I thought about my grandfather who'd built birdhouses and believed in me. I ate my turkey. I smiled when expected. I waited. After the turkey, after the pie, after Sophia had played her piece and my mother had dabbed her eyes, I stood up. I opened my portfolio. I placed the receipt on the table first, then the trust withdrawal forms with my forged signature, then the photograph from the parking lot. Then Max's veterinary file, 11 years of medical records from a chain-link fence and concrete and neglect. "I found Max," I said. The room went still. 3 weeks ago. He's in my car. He's deaf, his hips are destroyed, and he has kidney disease from 11 years without proper care. Mrs. Voss left him to me when she died. She also left me this. The photograph. She thought I should know the truth. My mother's face didn't change, not at first, then something cracked, a small twitch at the corner of her mouth. "This is absurd, Claire. That dog ran away. You were hysterical. You always were dramatic." "The receipt is dated August 14th, Mom, 3 days before I left for state. You sold him for exactly $800. Sophia's first month at Westbridge. The conservatory she quit after 12 weeks. I looked at my sister. Did you know where that money came from?" Sophia's face was red. "This is insane. You're insane. You can't just come in here and accuse Mom of—" "I can," I said. "Because I also found the trust, Grandpa's trust, the one he left for me. You forged my signature, Mom. You drained it for Sophia's tuition. And when she quit, you took the family to Cancun. I have the photographs, I have the bank records, I have the forged documents." My father stood up. "Claire, that's enough. This is Thanksgiving. You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said, and my voice was steady. It was the steadiest it had ever been. "You embarrassed me. Every time you watched her take something that was mine and called it fairness. Every time you let her play while I worked. Every time you looked at me like I was the price you paid for her." I picked up the trust documents. "I'm not pressing charges for the forgery. Not because you don't deserve it. Because I don't want to spend another year of my life in a courtroom with people who couldn't see me when I was standing right in front of them. But here's what is going to happen. Grandpa's trust was illegal to touch. The statute of limitations is generous, and I have a very good lawyer. You're going to sign the house over to me. The house Grandpa built. The house that's still legally half mine through the estate he never got to revise before he died. You're going to sign it, or I'm going to file Monday morning. My mother laughed, a short, barking sound. You can't be serious. You'd throw your own family out of their home. You threw my dog into a parking lot for $800. You threw my future into a conservatory your other daughter couldn't finish. You threw every birthday, every recital, every moment I needed you into a drawer and called it building character. I closed the portfolio. I'm not throwing you out, I'm taking back what was never yours to give away. I walked to the door, I opened it. Max was in his carrier on the porch, awake now, his cloudy eyes finding mine. I lifted him. He was light, he was so light. I turned back to the dining room. The house will be placed in a trust for senior animal rescue. You'll have a life estate. You can live there until you die. But when you're gone, it becomes a sanctuary for dogs like Max. Dogs who were sold by people who should have loved them. And Sophia, I looked at my sister who hadn't moved from her chair. There's no piano in a dog sanctuary. I walked to my car. No one followed. No one called my name. I placed Max in the passenger seat, buckled his carrier, and drove home. He slept the whole way, his head on my thigh, his breath warm and slow and finally safe. The documents were signed the following Tuesday. My father signed first. My mother took 3 days, then signed in her lawyer's office, not mine. The house went into trust 2 weeks before Christmas. I hired a contractor to convert the living room into a kennel. Sophia moved into an apartment across town, funded by the last of my parents' savings. I visited the house once before the conversion. I stood in my grandfather's workshop. The birdhouses were still there, half-finished, covered in dust. I found one that was complete, a wren house with a tiny porch and a roof that lifted for cleaning. I took it. It sits on my desk now. Max died in March. He was in my bed on his favorite blanket with his head in my lap. I told him every good thing about him. I told him he was the best boy. I told him I never stopped looking. I told him I was sorry it took so long. He sighed and he left. I buried him in the backyard of the sanctuary under a tree my grandfather planted before I was born. The sanctuary opened in May. We named it Max's House. We take senior dogs, dogs with medical needs, dogs that other shelters can't place. We have 12 residents now. Brave, the pit bull from my early days, came to live with us. He's the welcome committee. He sleeps on the porch and wags his tail at every visitor. I see my mother sometimes at the grocery store, at the pharmacy. She doesn't speak. I don't either. We have nothing to say. She was afraid of me, I think. Not because I was cruel, because I was right, because I finally stopped begging. Sophia called me once. It was a Tuesday. She was crying. She'd been evicted. She needed money. I listened. I told her about Max's house. I told her we had an opening for volunteer. She hung up. I don't know where she is now. If someone sold your heart to fund someone else's dream, hear me. It wasn't your fault. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And the only thing more powerful than their indifference is your refusal to pretend it didn't happen. That's my story. If it spoke to you, comment below. If you're still looking for something they took, tell me. I'll read every word. Subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.